where the madness on the court takes over. This is Game Day Garage, the Quad.
Welcome in, everybody. This is the Quad presented by Game Day Garage. It is Final Four Saturday upcoming over the next few days. Can't wait. Two unbelievable matchups, Illinois, UConn, and then Arizona and Michigan. I'm PJ Glasser. You guys can follow me on X at PJ Glasser9. I'll be previewing the Final Four here for about the next 25, 30 minutes or so, talking about some of the Elite Eight games, potential national championship matchups that we can get as well. And if you guys have any questions, any comments, please let me know and type them in to the StreamYard. The Elite Eight, the UConn and Duke game was obviously an instant classic. That one was awesome. We'll save that one for last. We'll start with the games that we had on Saturday and some takeaways. The first game up was the Illinois and Iowa game. Iowa was up by double digits in the first half. Illinois had to claw their way back and win that game. They end up covering the spread and winning 71-59. Illinois was really impressive to me in Houston in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. They went up against two teams in Houston and Iowa that are both defensive-minded, two teams that play at a slow pace, two teams with two of the best coaches in the country that know who they are, know their identity. And my big question with Illinois coming into the tournament, offensively, terrific team, one of the best in the country. Ken Pom has loved this team all year. The advanced metrics have loved this team all year. My issue with the Illini was the fact that they were dead last in the country in turnovers forced per game. So, Illinois, they haven't forced a lot of turnovers so far in the tournament, but I think their defensive pressure has been excellent. Their rebounding has been really, really good. And, Wagler's been great. Merkovich has been good for them for much of the tournament as well. Stojakovic has stepped up in some big moments. Brad Underwood did a really good job of building this team to have depth at the guard position and also in the front court and to give them great size. To watch them do what they did to Houston and beat them the way that they did was super impressive. So Illinois is off to the Final Four. Arizona and Purdue. I mean, look, Arizona, this was a team that was down by 7 at halftime in the Elite Eight to the Boilermakers. And you wondered if this was the same old Arizona. They were struggling to hit shots. Defense was struggling a little bit. Braden Smith was getting to his spots. And Trey Kaufman-Renn was in foul trouble. And Purdue was still able to build a lead. They were up 7. I remember looking at the live halftime line, and it was a pick'em. Who was going to win the game? Arizona to come out, dominate Purdue like they did, and outscore the Boilermakers by 22 points. I think that second half right there showed the country why so many of us, myself included, think Arizona is the best team in the country, why we picked them to win the national championship. That was a really impressive performance. And then on Sunday, the two Elite Eight games that we had, Michigan with a 33-point win over Tennessee, 95-62. I mean, this game was a beatdown. Tennessee was hanging around for maybe the first 10, 12 minutes of the game in the first half. And then Michigan just went on a huge scoring run. That's always the fear with Tennessee. They're good defensively. They're good on the glass. Are they going to be able to knock down shots? Gillespie and Ament were just ice cold in that game. When those two guys aren't hitting their shots, it opens the door for the other team. Been super impressed with Michigan through 4 games, how they just have not had one of those offensive dud type games. Usually in the tournament, if you win a national championship, you go to a Final Four. Usually there's one game along the way where you're going to have to win when you don't have your offensive A game. And Michigan scored 90 points in every game so far in the tournament. They're shooting a high percentage from 3-point range. We'll see if that can continue on Saturday. And then Duke and UConn, obviously the game of the tournament so far, game of the Elite Eight. Braylon Mullins with that all-time shot against Duke. Down by as many as 19. Number 1 seeds were 134-0, I believe, when leading by 15 or more at halftime. So, I mean, just some historical stuff. And the fact that UConn could not buy a three-pointer, they could not make, I think at one point they were like shooting 6% from three-point range. They were like 1 for 14 from three-point range. They finally hit a couple down the stretch. Terrace Reed was really the only guy offensively that can keep them in it. And that Dan Hurley magic, man, they just found a way to win the game. So now we have our Final Four set. Of course, we have Michigan and Arizona and UConn and Illinois. So 2 games that should be really, really good. Let me take some time real quick. Let me tweet out that the stream is going so that people can tune in and watch before we break down these 2 matchups. All right, we'll start with the early game, Illinois and UConn. How about the fact that both of these games are 1.5-point spreads, which is like, that's all you could want in a Final Four. Normally in the Final Four, maybe we get one game with a tight point spread. We get another one with like 7.5 or something like that. But this year, both games are 1.5. You can't really ask for much more. The Illini are favored in this one, and the total is 139.5. Shop around, obviously, different money line prices. Illinois at some spots, minus 125, minus 130, minus 135. So make sure you grab the best price. This is a tricky handicap, the Illinois and UConn game. Let's see, the right rail. Okay, let me try and pull that down before we start. Let's see. Our guy Nick is telling me that the right rail is a little off. Nick, I'm sorry. I don't know how to change the right rail. I know that's from Ian yesterday, who was doing the women's preview for the Final Four. Obviously, we're talking the men's Final Four here, so just ignore the right rail. Apologies for that. But the Illinois and UConn game, this is a tricky handicap. UConn has all the experience going into this game. Dan Hurley, this is his 3rd Final Four in 4 years. Alex Caravan, this is his 3rd Final Four in 4 years. Illinois, this is the first taste that these guys are getting at this Final Four. Underwood's never been to one. None of these players have ever been to one. And it's a big adjustment. It's different if a coach or a team is experiencing their first Sweet 16, their first Elite 8, but you're still going to an NBA building, and you had the experience of playing in that round of 64, round of 32 game where it's a quick turnaround. You got 4 teams in there. This is a whole different animal where it's the Final Four now. The media coverage is different. You're playing in an NFL stadium where the sight lines are different. The depth perception is different. It's just a whole different ball game. So the fact that UConn is as experienced as you could be in this spot with how much they have been there recently, and Illinois is a team that getting their first crack at it, certainly a huge advantage for UConn. It almost makes me want to bet UConn in the first half, right? Both teams you would assume would have some nerves early on in the game. Maybe we get some sloppy play a little bit. Both teams like to play at a slower pace. Both teams have been really good defensively in the tournament. But I think maybe UConn in the first half, they're plus 110 on the first half money line, plus 1.5. Maybe if you want to do like a race to 5, race to 10, race to 15, you want to have some fun with that. I would look to attack UConn early on in the game because I think that experience from Hurley and the Huskies could prove to be big in the early moments of this game, while maybe Illinois still try to figure themselves out a little bit. Then in the second half, I think Illinois could wake up, and they are the better team, which is why they're favored. It's a scary game because, getting UConn as a dog, it almost feels like getting Mahomes or the Chiefs as a dog, or it almost feels like getting Tom Brady as a dog. It feels like one of these teams where do you really want to be the person to bet against UConn when they got a plus sign next to their name, and then they end up winning the game and you look like the dummy that faded them, right? I get it. It feels like everybody's on UConn, though. Like, just kind of scrolling through Twitter, listening to all these things. I really haven't heard a lot of people that have liked Illinois. Keep in mind, UConn, they're very fortunate to be in this game. I mean, they were down 19 to Duke. Like, they shouldn't have won that game. If Duke just takes care of the ball, if Mullins doesn't hit that 35, 40-footer, like, it's Duke and Illinois. So they're very fortunate to be in this game. Whereas Illinois, I mean, they have dominated their way to this game. All of their wins have been by double digits so far in the tournament, which has been super impressive. But that also begs the question, how is Illinois going to look if this is a close game in the final 3 to 4 minutes? That Iowa-Illinois game was kind of close down the stretch. I know Houston made a little bit of a late charge in that game, but it wasn't like a tie game with 2 minutes to go where it's really stressful. There's a lot going on. This is one of those games where it could come right down to the wire. And I think that definitely benefits UConn in a game like this because they have that experience. And we haven't seen Illinois in those type of moments yet. So this could be a good live betting game. You wait to see if it's a close game in the final 3 minutes. I think that benefits UConn, and you can get it still a nice money line price on them to win the game. I don't have any thoughts really on the total or who I would think to win the game pregame. I just think UConn first half is the play. And I think UConn first half is the play for me at plus 110 on the money line. And then I think if it's a close game with like 3 minutes to go, 4 minutes to go, I would take the Huskies at plus 110. So or I would take Huskies at plus 110 or whatever plus money price they're going to be at the end of the game. Total at 139.5. UConn's had low totals all throughout the tournament, it feels like, but they've actually been a good over team so far. Their game went over against Furman. Their game went over against Michigan State. Their game went over against Duke. And Illinois has actually been a good under team so far in the tournament because their offense hasn't performed like their metrics have all year, and their defense has been terrific. So you got an Illinois team that's been a great under team in the tournament and a UConn team that's been a great over team. I'm just going to stay away. I'll take UConn in the first half. And then again, if it's a close game, late tie game, 1 possession game, 3 minutes to go, I think that's a big advantage for the Huskies. The other game we have up, Michigan and Arizona. Now, this game, this game is, I haven't been this excited for a NCAA tournament game, for a Final Four game, probably since that Duke, North Carolina game when Coach K was in his final game. Caleb Love hit that shot for North Carolina. These are the two best teams in the country, and they're very similar in how they constructed their rosters. Both teams have terrific front courts, outstanding. Both teams have veteran point guards, Elliot Cadeau for Michigan, Jaden Bradley for Arizona. Both teams really good coaches, Dusty May, Tommy Lloyd. Both teams played a pretty fast pace. According to Ken Pom, Michigan 22nd in tempo, Arizona 56th in tempo. The big difference between these two teams is the three-point line. The massive difference. Arizona is like one of the bottom teams in the country in three-pointers made per game because they don't attempt a lot. They know who they are. They want layups and they want free throws. That's what they want. They can hit three-pointers. They're capable of it. Del Orso, really good three-point shooter. Burries can knock some down. Koa Pete and Jalen Bradley will take some threes, but they make their living with 2 paint touches, feeding their big men, and with free throws. That's how they like to live. Michigan, on the other hand, they're just a well-balanced basketball team. I mean, they can hit you down low with their front court, with their bigs, Mara, Marez Johnson, Yaxel Landenberg, and they can also shoot threes. That's what's been so impressive about Michigan in this tournament is it's been Roddy Gale off the bench. It's been Trey McKinney off the bench. Like, these guys are shooting nearly 50% from three-point range. If you have to worry about Michigan knocking down shots from the outside, when you already have to worry about their front court and their inside presence, I mean, it's just game over. So that's why I think Michigan is a slight favorite in the game. Arizona has been the more consistent team this year, but I think Michigan's A game is just a little bit better than Arizona's A game because of their ability to knock down the three-point shot. What also is going to be an interesting matchup to watch is because both of the front courts are so good and they're both so confident in their ability to control that part of the game. Do we just see these teams go at each other, or do they make adjustments? Do they try and get each other in foul trouble? I think that's going to be a really interesting part of this game. Something I have bet in Arizona, Michigan is I took the first half over at 73.5. Both of these teams are top 7 in the country in first half points per game. They're two of the best teams in the country in the first 20 minutes. Some of those other teams in the top 7, we've seen them play already in the tournament. Bama played Michigan. They're the top 2 teams in first half scoring in the country. They combined for nearly 100 points. Arkansas and High Point are 2 other teams in that top 7, and they combined for 85 points in the first half. Michigan and Arizona, again, being 2 of the top 7 teams, we're only getting 73.5. I understand that they're also 2 of the best defensive teams in the country, but they're better defensively in the second half than they are in the first half. If you go through and look, these teams are great at making adjustments at the intermission. Their defense is still good in the first half, but it's just not as good as it is in the second half. Also, as I mentioned, both these teams like to play at a fast tempo, so you should get a pretty good tempo in this game. And it's the Final Four. These kids are excited. They want to go up and down the floor. They want to make highlight reel dunks. They want to score points. So I think you're going to get a pretty good pace to this game. The fear is that it's the Final Four, and maybe they're just not knocking down shots. Maybe the sight lines playing in an NFL stadium aren't great. All those sorts of things. That's definitely the fear. But with the way Michigan's been shooting it in this tournament, and I think Arizona's going to have a pretty good first half as well, I just think 73.5 is a little too low, especially when the defenses have not been as good in the first half as they have been in the second half. So I did take a first half over in that game. Another game where it's tricky to pick the side, I would take Arizona if I had to pick it. Again, they were my pick coming into the tournament, and there's nothing that they have shown me to jump off the Arizona bandwagon. I do think Michigan, their A game is a little bit better than Arizona. If both teams played to their capability, I think Michigan probably wins the game, but I think Arizona's guards are going to frustrate Michigan's guards a little bit. I trust their backcourt of Bradley and Burries to make more plays down the stretch than I do Michigan's. And, you know, I watched Michigan against Duke. I was at that game in DC, and Michigan got off to a super hot start in that game. They scored like 22 points in the first 10 minutes of the game, and then they scored like 35 points the final 30 minutes of the game. Duke was able to make adjustments on the fly with their defense, and I think Arizona is going to be able to do the same, just like they did to Purdue. And, you know, this was a team, they've lost 2 games all year. They had a ridiculously hard non-conference schedule. They played in the Big 12. They took everybody's best shot. This is a team that won the Big 12 regular. They were undefeated in the non-conference. Then they won the Big 12 regular season. Then they won the Big 12 conference tournament. I mean, I think they are the best team in the country. And now that Tommy Lloyd and Arizona have gotten over the hump, they have made it to the Final Four. I kind of think they can play loose a little bit. They can play free, and they're the underdog in this game. With all that they've accomplished, they're the dog. I think Arizona wins the game, but I think it's going to be a hell of a matchup. Also, 2 player props that I like in this game between Arizona and Michigan. The first one is going to be Yaxel Landenborg over points for Michigan. Let me get what his updated point total is. Let's see. Yaxel's point total is 16.5 points. I like over 16.5 points for Yaxel Landenborg, Michigan's star forward. I was going back through and I was looking at Yaxel's game log this season, and a lot of his highest point games were against teams that are good defensively, teams that are great on the glass, and he just played well in big games. Like the biggest games that Michigan played in this year, those were the games where Yaxel played his best. And when he kind of took the load on his shoulders, when he was really scoring the ball, he had 29 against Maryland this year. That was his season high. But then 27 against Tennessee, 27 and 26 in both games against Michigan State. He had 25 in that round of 32 game against St. Louis, 23 in that game against Alabama, 21 in the game against Duke, and then 20 against Purdue in the Big Ten tournament final. they're giving you 16.5 on Yaxel's game log because that's kind of what his season average has been. But when you look at the body of work and you look at what he's done in some of the biggest games of the season against some of the best teams, against teams that are good rebounding teams, teams that are good defensive teams, teams that play at a high tempo, teams that can really score the ball, these are the games where Yaxel shows up. These are the games where, again, Michigan is a really balanced team. Some games, Morrow will lead him in scoring. Some games, Morez Johnson will lead him in scoring. Some games, Cadeau goes off and he'll lead him in scoring. Most of the time, it is Yaxel. But in these big games, he's usually the guy that shows up. So the fact that it's only 16.5, I think the over is a great look. And I would look to take some alts on that as well. Because if there's any guy on Michigan that could pop off and go for 25, 30 points in this game, it's going to be Yaxel. He's going to have a difficult matchup. Karchenkov's going to be guarding him for Arizona, who might be the best wing defender in college basketball. He's fantastic, but Yaxel's really, really good. And again, he's been playing his best in the best games this season. So I think his over 16.5 points is a good look. And then the other guy I'll take, Braden Burries, over 16.5 points for Arizona as well. I went back and looked at Burry's game log this season, and I went to look at some of his best games that he had. He loved playing in the games where he was going up against the team that played at a fast pace. And I mentioned Michigan plays at a top 25 tempo in the country, according to KenPom. They're 22nd. So Michigan wants to get up and down the floor. They want to run. And when you look at Arizona's games this season, when they went up against fast teams, those were some of the biggest offensive outputs that Burry's had this year. When they went up against BYU, he had his second highest point total at 29. When he went up against Kansas State, who plays at a top 10 tempo, he had his third highest point total at 28. When he went up against Bama, who plays at one of the fastest tempos, he also had 28 points. So 3 of his 4 highest scoring games were against teams that want to go super fast. And Michigan, even though they might be not as super fast as those teams, they want to go fast. And those are the type of things that you want to look for. There are some players that really dominate in the half court. There are some players that really dominate when it's a low-scoring game. Braden Burries, I mean, he dominates in most games, but he really likes playing in fast-paced games. His highest scoring game so far of the tournament was against Arkansas, team that wants to play fast, the team with the good offense. He had 23 points in that game. So these are the kind of games that Burries normally plays really well. I'm not too worried about him being a freshman and this moment being too big for him. He just strikes me as kind of the guy who he's got it, he's going to be ready for this moment. So that was something that jumped out to me was Burries. His best games were against teams that wanted to go fast. I mean, those were the games that he excels in. He excels in the open floor kind of games, which makes sense because he is a terrific transition player. You get more possessions in fast-paced games. And also for a team that doesn't shoot a lot of three-pointers, he shot a decent amount of threes in those games. He was 5 for 10 against Alabama. He shot 5 threes against Kansas State. He shot 4 threes against Arkansas. So again, this is a guy who usually shoots maybe like 2 3-pointers per game, and he's shooting like 5, 7, 10 against all these other teams. He was also really good in some of their other Big 12 games. At Kansas, he had 25 points. Against Houston in the Big 12 title game, he had 21. He's been a big-time player, and he plays well against teams that want to go fast and play at a fast tempo. So Burries and Lendenborg, the 2 stars for both of these teams. I like both of them to go over their points prop, both at 16.5. Those would be some player props that I would look at. Nothing for me really in the UConn and Illinois game. From a prop standpoint, I've looked over this game. UConn made it a point. They've really made it a point all tournament. But they really made it a point in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 to get Terrace Reed the ball early and get Terrace Reed the ball often. And something that Michigan State and Duke really didn't do is they didn't double the post. They trusted their bigs to go one-on-one and handle Terrace Reed, and that was just a mistake. They didn't want to help off the shooters and leave them open. And I had a media credential for the UConn Duke Elite 8 game, and I was talking to Terrace after that game, and I said, Terrace, you had 10 of the first 16 points for UConn Was the game plan to just get you the ball and have you go one-on-one if there's no help? And he's like, yeah, that was the game plan. I think that's going to be the same game plan again. Even though Illinois' got great size, they can shuffle in a lot of different bigs. I think because they trust their bigs so much and they have so much depth, that they are going to trust their bigs to go one-on-one with Terrace Reed. And I don't know if that's the best idea. So his points prop is at 15.5, but that could be another good look there, is Terrace Reed over 15.5. Betting props with Illinois, especially in the point department, is tricky. Wagler, he's the highest at 17.5. He's definitely the guy that's the most consistent for sure. But trying to figure out, the Avicic brothers, or trying to figure out Merkovich, or trying to figure out Boswell, I just think it's too tough. And same goes with the UConn guys. Outside of Terrace Reed, it's really about which UConn guard is hitting their shots. Is Caravan hitting his shots? Mullen, Solo Ball. Which of these guys are hitting their shots? I think it's too tough. So if I were to bet somebody, it would be Terrace Reed potentially. Again, because of the size of Illinois, I think it makes it tough to bet rebounds or assists or anything like that. But I do love the player props for Burries and Lendenborg over points. Maybe look at potentially Terrace Reed over points as well. And then I like Michigan, Arizona first half over 73.5 points. I lean Arizona to win the game, plus 100 on the money line. And then I like UConn money line in the first half at plus 110. I think UConn race to 10, race to 15 early on in the game. Leaning on that experience could be a good bet as well. And then I also think if it's a close game between Illinois and UConn with 3 minutes to go and we're tied, I think betting UConn live, I think that's the kind of game that would favor UConn. Illinois, I think, needs to be up by 8 or 9 with 2 minutes to go to probably win the game. If it's close, one possession game, I think that favors UConn in the final few minutes, and I would look to bet them live as well. Also, with both of these spreads being 1.5, if you guys know me, you know I love betting overtime. We have not gotten an overtime game in a while in the tournament. And if you've watched this college basketball season, you know that the marquee games have been awesome. All regular season long, any high profile, big time college basketball matchup that we have gotten, it feels like it has delivered. Duke UConn, the game everybody was most excited for in the Elite Eight, that delivered. St. John's and Duke, the game that people were looking forward to in the Sweet 16, that game delivered. St. John's and Kansas in the round of 32, that game delivered. You can go down. It feels like all the big matchups have more often than not really delivered this season. They've all come down to the final moments. So if you want a fun overtime sprinkle, 16-1, Michigan, Arizona to go to OT. I'll be throwing a couple of bucks on that one as well. But both games should be awesome. I think we get an Arizona UConn national championship. I would expect Arizona to be about a 5.5 point favorite in that game. And I would look to bet Arizona. I will tell you guys this. I think the winner of Michigan, Arizona, I'll probably be betting them against the spread, against Illinois and UConn. Those, I would probably bet in those teams. I think all 4 teams are capable of winning it. Illinois would be pretty historical if they won the national title because, as you guys know, if you follow college basketball, no team in the last 20 plus years has been inside the top 12 of the week 6 AP poll and won the national title. Illinois was 13th. They just missed out, but they're not inside the top 12. And also no team has ever won the national championship losing their first game in a conference tournament. And Illinois did that. So they'd be knocking off 2 things if they win the national title. UConn, I mean, they have the metrics to do it for sure. They were inside the top 12. They won a game in their conference tournament. Offensively, they're 27th. Defensively, they're 9th. So they check off, according to KenPom, so they check off a lot of the historical parameters that you want. They could do it. I just think the winner of Arizona, Michigan is going to win it all. So, and I think they probably end up covering that spread. I think it's going to be Arizona. Certainly could be Michigan, though. It's going to be an unbelievable Final Four. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy the Final Four this weekend. Enjoy the national championship, and I'll talk to you again soon.